falling apart, but in some cases are working. To help me go through some of the biggest news stories, I have Carl Higbie. Carl, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
So just so my audience knows, they probably recognize your face, but Carl is a Newsmax host, former U.S. Navy SEAL veteran with time served in Iraq. He is a writer and also an author. It seems that the United States is being dragged towards war in many different ways. I want to start here at home. I read yesterday that a huge population, a huge percentage of the U.S. population doubts whether our elections are free and fair anymore. Yesterday, the people of Arizona discovered between 500,000 to 1 million people on their voter rolls. Democrats, of course, are going into overdrive, trying to keep those names available. At the same time, down in Georgia, an audit showed over 380,000 missing ballot images in a county where President Trump is on trial. Why do you think Democrats are fighting so hard to keep dead people, moved people, illegals on their voter rolls? And what are your thoughts on these stories coming out?
I mean, it's crazy. Like, who would be against cleaning up voter rolls? You know, the Democratic Party is the one that screams the loudest about democracy and all these other things, and yet you're not willing to take dead people off the voter. I mean, guys, come on. Like, we were all bored at night, just not last night. And I look at this every single time, and this is the same party that thinks like they literally think that black people and minorities can't get an ID. You require an ID for everything in life today, and yet you're going to tell me that that's what you want, that you don't have to have an ID. I live in Connecticut, where it's like the ID is optional. They say it's like, well, you might as well not even have the requirement, because if I sit there and I walk in, you're sure they ask you for your ID, but if you don't give it to them, they're like, okay, here's your ballot, go ahead and vote. It's like, based on what integrity?
Yeah. Well, down in Georgia, they say asking for an ID is racist. And up in New York, they say black kids don't even know what the word computer means.
It's just, I mean, first off, Kathy Hochul is a mess. I don't know. Did you see yesterday? She rescinded the congestion tax, which, by the way, this is every Democrat's dream, is to put a tax on where you go and when you go there. All right. So they were going to, like, Manhattan's a grid. So below 60th Street, they were going to impose like a $20 fee if you drove below 60th Street. And basically all these distributors, this is like where liberal policies meet reality. All these distributors and all these trucks and everything who are going to be charged like $30 or $40 for a truck. We're like, yeah, we're just going to drop your stuff off at 61st Street and you can come pick it up. Like, we're not driving in there anymore. And so all these businesses were freaking out. And finally, Kathy Hochul, the same person who thinks that black people don't know what a computer is sitting there like, oh man, I guess we got to rescind this. It's like, well, gee, who saw that coming?
Yeah, it's like they don't want a trucker boycott, but then they charge them so much that they boycott naturally. Yeah,
right.
It's absolute insanity up there. On Twitter yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, the Secret Service limo driver who supposedly had Donald Trump on January 6th jump over the limo partition, grab the steering wheel, and try to force him to the Capitol, has now come out and openly said that Representative Liz Cheney has been actively blocking him from talking and testifying to the American people in order to make Donald Trump look guilty. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I have plenty of thoughts on Liz Cheney. She's not a Republican. I'm glad she got spanked in her primary by 30-something points. Harriet Hagman is a much better option than she ever was. The thing with Liz Cheney is, like, she has this vendetta against Trump, and she would rather work with Democrats and destroy the country than, God forbid. So she doesn't even have to support him. She just has to get out of his way. She won't even do that. She's wanted to make this January 6th thing like her hill to die on, that she is going to get President Trump. It was bad like this. Some stupid people did some stupid things on January 6th. But you know what? The only person who died on that day because of actions that were taken on that day were Ashley Babbitt. Okay? She was shot in the neck by a police officer. The problem is they want everybody to think that this is like the darkest day. I mean, Joe Biden gave a speech on D-Day 80-year anniversary of D-Day, about how it's like, we're facing the most dangerous thing ever to democracy. And like Liz Cheney cannot be happier about this. She wants us to believe January 6th was worse than Pearl Harbor. It just wasn't. It wasn't. And the more we see the tapes, the more we find out that there were likely some bad actors that were not protesters and not Trump supporters in that crowd. It looks like there was, tear gas unleashed on these people and rubber bullets fired into the crowd. It looks like a bunch of things. Like, you're going to tell me you can identify people by the crease of their ears 3 years later and hold them into court and arrest them publicly, but you can't identify where pipe bombs in front of the DNC came from? Give me a break. And Liz Cheney has just bought this hook, line, and sinker, and she's going to ride this one all the way to the end of her political career.
Yeah, well, hopefully she's already at the end of it. It is infuriating how these Democrats say these wild things. For example, Robert De Niro had the courage or conviction or whatever he thinks it is to say out loud the stupidity, in my opinion. He says, "I now know what it was like to live under Hitler and the Holocaust because I lived under a Donald Trump presidency." Like, are you freaking kidding me? 6 million Jews were gassed. Almost 100 million people died, ending that war. And you have the nerve to say that you know what it's like to live under Hitler? Unbelievable.
I talked about this on my show, and quite frequently, actually. And one of the things is, you always ask how people like Hitler came to power. You always ask that how, like, oh my gosh, how did people just stand by and let Hitler do whatever he did? And the answer is pretty simple. He took a little bit here, a little bit there from one section of people and then moved on to the next section of people. Not unlike COVID, by the way. And all these people who said, like, I was standing for democracy. Robert De Niro was wearing a mask before he came to that podium, a mask that we know definitively does absolutely nothing. Okay, he's still doing it, and this guy is going to sit there. He's one of the people that would have let Hitler go and do whatever he wanted to do while living on his knees. That's what these people are. That's what Liz Cheney is. That's what Robert De Niro is. That's what all these Democrats, and especially all these people who pushed this outlandish COVID policy, and anybody who went along with it, is exactly the reason people like Hitler ended up getting to power.
Yeah. Yeah, I just can't believe that he actually said that out loud. You are a former U.S. Navy SEAL. While Donald Trump was being labeled a felon with his bogus trumped-up charges in New York, President Biden quietly authorized Ukraine's use of American long-range missiles to attack Russia. Why do you think Biden is so hell-bent on helping Ukraine versus seeking peace? And why, as we celebrate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, NATO is trying to expand a war with Russia, even though Russia is the one that helped destroy Hitler?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah. Going back to history is, Russia was the enemy of our enemy. They weren't our friend. However, they helped us reach the ultimate goal of getting rid of Hitler. That said, I don't understand the Ukraine thing. I really just don't. I actually went to Ukraine when the war broke out to do some reporting from, the war zone and from the front line over there. And I'm looking at this as like, it just seems to me like the money we're sending over there, by the way, is almost completely unaccountable. We don't know where most of it went. But the other thing the money we do know where it went, a lot of it is funding their public utility unions. Like, if you work for municipalities, the money, the aid that we're giving that is coming from our pockets as taxpayers is funding like their street cleaners and their police and their fire departments and their hospitals. Like, that's not what I think it should be going to. I mean, I think there was some truth to Trump's, concerns about how deeply tied in the Biden administration was. Look, Joe Biden said that he put up $1 billion of foreign aid in exchange for firing a prosecutor that just so happened to be looking into the natural gas company that his son was on the board of. I mean, call me crazy, but like, how long do we have to wait before that theory becomes proven?
Yeah. Speaking of Hunter Biden, Twitter is just full of people repeating President or Joe Biden at the time during the debate with Trump. This is Russian disinformation. 50 intelligence people are saying that this is a lie. And now yesterday, the Hunter Biden laptop is entered into a criminal case, and it is verified by the FBI to be absolutely true. It's like, wow, just give these conspiracies enough time and they become facts. What are your thoughts on that?
I was going to say, like, the difference between a conspiracy theory and a fact is 6 months. um, it just same thing with COVID. Like, we told you all these things. You called us crazy. You had us shouted down. You had people, and like this Russia thing. Trump called him out during the debate. He was like, "You kidding me, right?" How about I got an idea? All of these 51 former intel officials who put their name on that letter saying it's Russian disinformation and it's a plant and all this stuff, they should lose their clearance forever. They should never be able to work in anything that requires a clearance ever again, because they stood on the backs of their clearance with absolutely no knowledge of any of the details of this, clearly. Or they knew and then they lied, which is even worse. It means they can't be trusted with our national secrets. And then they told the world that this was, gobbledygook and we shouldn't trust it because the Russians were involved. Well, it turns out now it's in court. I mean, this is why they tried so hard to keep all this stuff out of court. But now that it's here, it's like, well, I told you so. How many more times do Republicans have to say, I told you so, before at least some Democrats, enough to win elections on the Republican side, come over and say, yeah, guys, like, sorry about that.
Yeah, like you say, just give it enough time and it becomes fact. I also read this morning that the Georgia case against Trump has been halted while they now investigate District Attorney Fani Willis. It's like, okay, everyone that goes after Trump, all of a sudden their life gets in the spotlight. Now they're investigated. I'm also reading that the Florida Judge Eileen Cannon, she's now questioning whether special counsel Jack Smith even has authority. And then 2 days ago, Representative Thomas Massey asked Merrick Garland directly, why is Jack Smith running this case against Donald Trump? Congress didn't approve this, and you don't have any authority. And Merrick Garland confirmed he doesn't have any authority. Do you see these cases just falling apart, or at least not affecting the 2024 election at this point?
People don't even care anymore. Look, like, Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felonies in this kangaroo court in Manhattan, and the polls went more in his favor. Like, the people don't care anymore. Look, the gig is up. Everybody knows that these are politically motivated. Look, every single one of these prosecutors, if you keep in mind, Jack Smith was a civilian. He was appointed as special counsel. You can't do that without congressional approval, like you said. So Jack Smith is also the guy who had a conviction that he orchestrated over a Virginia governor that was overturned 9-0 by the Supreme Court. Okay, this guy's not exactly he's not good at his job. Okay, let's just say that. And now you put him in charge of a Trump document scandal or I say scandal, it's like, a Trump document thing that we now know that Joe Biden had those things sent to Mar-a-Lago for Trump. Okay, so we know the White House sent them. They came back and they retrieved them with lethal force authorized. Like, are you kidding me? On the former president, likely next president of the United States. And we're sitting here debating whether or not, Fani Willis, she might be on the up. No, she's not. Every one of these people met with the White House in some capacity, whether it's their minions or their appointed attorneys or co-counselors. They all met with the White House, okay? They all met with people that are politically orchestrating this entire attack. They're all trying to do the same thing, which is keep Donald Trump off the campaign trail. The Democrats really thought that their plan was so star-spangled awesome that they were going to figure out a way to get a talking point that people were going to say, oh my gosh, I could never vote for Donald Trump. It's like, well, you know what? Like, these Democrats, they just never cease to amaze me. And then I literally got into it with a guy on Twitter. Was like, how could you support a felon? And I'm like, dude, you guys knelt down and had parades for George Floyd. Don't lecture me on supporting a felon.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good point. Okay. You've got a book coming out, Profiles in Freedom, Heroes Who Shaped America. Tell me about the book. Why did you write it? What are we going to learn reading it?
So, we see what history being whitewashed these days. Like, it's unbelievable. The left is tearing down literally everything that doesn't fit their narrative. And I'm so tired of it. So I was like, look, let me put some short stories together. It's look, history's not exactly a popular thing. Like no one's like, hey, let's go to the bar and talk about history. But I wrote a book in a way that you'd want to learn about history over a beer with some buddies, and it's a series of short stories about people who shaped this country. And it's you have the Ben Franklins and the George Washingtons there, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's not mainstream history about these people. Like Ulysses S. Grant was arrested while he was president on horseback for drinking and riding. Okay, like these are things that the public generally doesn't know, but they're like nice anecdotes that keep people interested in history. But it also memorializes that the great sacrifices that people made for this country. And everyone says that. We're talking about this on D-Day, but when you look at the fact that like there's a huge amount of people that were like between 20 and 25 years old that got together, some were older, but they got together, they wrote the Declaration of Independence, which basically put a noose around their neck should they have lost that war. And they did it anyway. I mean, how many 25-year-olds now are eating Tide Pods and not founding nations? I think it's significant.
Yeah. What, as you researched and wrote, was there a particular chapter that you enjoyed writing the most?
So there were a lot of chapters that didn't make the final cut just because we had to cut it down for the length of the book. And Eisenhower, obviously on D-Day, you talk about someone who's significant, but there was someone like John Henry, and he didn't make the cut, but because we couldn't confirm details. Like, I mean, it's half man, half myth, and but learning about every single person, like the Carnegie empire, learning about all the people that did things, Samuel Colt, Ford, the people who changed industry in this book, but also the people behind him. Like I had a guy that was my high school wrestling coach that he didn't think much of it. I was just another wrestler on the team, and we got to know each other, and we're fantastic friends now. But the things like I've lived my entire life by a phrase that he told me that he didn't even remember he told me. And he like I was wrestling and I was having an off day, and he was like, never half-ass anything, whole ass everything. I dedicated the book to him based on that single comment, because it's like somebody behind the scenes who was just doing what they do to the best of their ability influenced someone else to such an extent that I've gone on to write 4 books and dedicate one of them to him.
Oh man, that's amazing. Okay, final question. Then I know you're prepping for your show. Yesterday, the biggest thing trending on Twitter that I saw was Biden's cognitive abilities. I guess a White House aide has leaked that he can't remember what's happening in meetings. He's falling asleep with foreign dignitaries. He's mixing up names, forgetting what's happening in different countries. How dangerous is it to have the head of the country, the head of the military, the person in charge of the nuclear football, having dementia and the inability to go from meeting to meeting and stay awake?
Dude, this is insane. And what's crazy to me is like his legal defense in his documents case is that he's a forgetful old man that wouldn't stand trial. That's literally his legal defense. But yet we're sitting there with him as holding the nuclear football. I mean, there's kind of like a thing for this. It rhymes with the 25th Amendment, and it would put Kamala Harris in charge for a little while, which I think would be great for Republicans, because I think highlighting how bad she is always good for Republicans. However, I'm just like thinking about this, and the people who are propping him up, one, it's elder abuse, but two, it's like a new level of crazy, because the people behind the scenes are getting to run the show, because like the guy, between Metamucil and naps, he's not doing much governing. And when you think about the fact that this is why everything is getting destroyed. Everything. Because there's a bunch of radical fringe leftists behind the scenes that have always wanted to do these big government socialist policies that have never been able to, because the face of the party, whether it be Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, they didn't want to be like Barack Obama went so far left. But if you look at the things that he did now, they weren't that far left. Like there's some moderate Republican policies that he was pushing, and we all called him super fringe left at the time. But he wouldn't want to put his face on and name on any of these. So they're happy to let Joe Biden take the fall because he's a doddering old man for all these crazy leftist policies that I think now they're committed to the fact that they're going to lose the next election over it. So look, I see this time and time again with the White House defending how he's, oh, Biden runs circles around me, and KJP comes up there being the world's worst press secretary talking about how, I could barely keep up. Nobody believes that.
Yeah. So you're like in your 40s and you're not overweight, and you can't keep up with the president. This is amazing to me. Like, how out of shape are you?
Yeah.
How bad is your fitness routine that you can't keep up with an 81-year-old man who can't keep his balance, can't stay awake, can't remember who he's talking to? Well, I know you're very busy. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to put a direct link to your new book down below. I hope it does really well. If it's okay, I'd also like to put a direct link to your Twitter or your X account so that people can follow you. Carl, thank you so much for coming on. Especially thank you for your service to our country. I really appreciate that and just wanted to publicly say that. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.